Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching 90 Day Fiancé, in which we follow Mike and Natalie. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's get to the show.
Are you in a good place?
Michael, great man. From my side, I'm in a good place with him.
Do you love Mike?
I think we have a potential because he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and there are a lot of moments that are good.
Mm-hmm. So this is interesting. They don't usually do this kind of scene in this show. They were recently in a fight, and they're in that interview thing, and they're being interviewed by the producer, and they're saying, you know, how are things going? Do you still love Mike? And there are these long pauses, and you can sense the tension for her, that she is ambivalent about that. On one hand, she's like, yes, I do love him. But on the other hand, I'm concerned. I mean, I'm inserting a lot of thoughts into her mind. I'm just guessing as to what she would say if she were to download her mind to us. It would be, yeah, I do love him, and I do remember loving him deeply, and I feel very worried about the future, and I have some questions about whether or not him and I are going to work out. I don't know. But yeah, overall, I'm willing to see this through and hope for the best. And there's a lot of reasons to believe that things will work out, something like that. And you could see the gears turning in her head, and eventually she chose to highlight he's a good person. I'm willing to move on in the future. I hope things are going to work out. I think things are going to work out. You heard her say that. That is a very functional thing to do. We've seen other couples on this show, when they're in that hot seat and they're fresh off of a conflict and they're asked a question like this, that they will not answer it in that way, that they will say, no, I don't think this is going to work at all, or something along those lines. Or they don't say anything that is inviting to the other person. She intuits, okay, out of all the things that I could be talking about right now, this is probably the thing that I should be saying that is most summarizing of how I feel. It certainly isn't all the thoughts and feelings I have. And it'll be helpful because if I say this thing right here, it's going to enhance our relationship, which will maybe get us both going down the road. I don't know why she did it, but one of the reasons, and I'll work with couples on this, is being in a relationship like this and having conflict, you have a lot of options about what you say and how you say it. That is under your control when you're not triggered. When you're not triggered, you have the opportunity to say what you want to say and how you want to say it. And when you have those choices, you got to put it to good use. People who are lower differentiation or lower maturity or more easily triggered or more relationally traumatized will have a thought and they'll just say it. They'll say, well, I'm just saying what I feel. No couple says everything, or no healthy couple says everything that they think and feel. You have to think, okay, what's the most relevant here? What's the most summarizing? What's going to help us move forward? What's legitimate and what's truthful and authentic to me, but also maybe emphasized in a way that gets us going in the right direction? So in your heart, in this moment, you could be like, I don't know. There's some bad signs here. I'm really hurt and I'm really angry. And I'm wondering if this is going to work out. But if I want to get us moving in the right direction, I should probably focus on the positive. So I'll say, and she said, he's a good guy, and I have hopes for the future, this kind of thing. That opens him up a little bit, softens him. He's able to maybe apologize, and then you're going in the right direction. Now, what some people say is, so I'm just supposed to suppress my feelings? I can't have my voice be heard? And of course, it's debatable, in case-by-case basis. But what I'd say to that, in terms of what I'm saying now, is absolutely you could be heard. But you have to think about the big picture. Is being heard about one particular issue right now so critical that you're willing to sacrifice or risk the entire status of the relationship? And if it is, then go for it. If it's not, build the relationship back, get to some goodwill place, get to a calm place, get to a place where you're loving each other. One, when you do that, they're going to be more willing to hear you. And two, you will very likely say it in a different way. When you're triggered and upset and you communicate something that you're upset about, it's going to come across 10, 100 times more hostile and more angry and more critical than if you wait for the two of you to bond and then you complain, then you request, then you communicate about something that you were upset about. So this is a very important action, and it's a decision that you make as a couple. You have in the moment, you're thinking, okay, we're having some tension right now. What should I say? What should I do? Now you notice for her, she's not like jubilant. She's not lovey-dovey all over him. So she's not inauthentic. She's subdued. She's upset. But she's focusing on, I'm guessing, what is going to help them build back their foundation so that she can actually start communicating maybe about things that she wants him to know about. It's just a guess, but let's rewind that and watch that again.
I think we have a potential because he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and there are a lot of moments that are good.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, just listening.
Now, I would hope that he would reciprocate. I'm starting to get an idea of the way that he deals with conflict. I'm not sure. There are a number of options, and maybe they're a combination of all these or none of them. I'd have to ask him. But one of the concerning possibilities is that he considers himself to be a little superior, and he considers himself to be someone that's like, okay, this is all your fault, honey. You're the emotional freakazoid one. And so you need to do the talking and the making up because I'm the one who's been transgressed upon, and I'm just going to sit here and listen while you grovel and not grovel, but while you take responsibility for what you need to do, and then we can move on, the way a father might be to a daughter. There's some red flags of that, but I don't know. That would be the worst option. Another option is that he is so relationally traumatized himself early in life that he learned to turn off his feelings, turn himself off to his feelings, and he was downloaded a version of masculinity that involves being the tough guy and being the stoic person, and that he doesn't know what to do in a situation like this, and he's so afraid, and he's trying to come across like a likable person or a good person, and so he's just remaining very standoffish about the whole thing. The other option is that he is utterly terrified and triggered right now, and he is saying to himself, if I say anything right now, it's going to be terrible, so I just need to shut down. And you'll actually see people do this in relationships and conflict, is that, and for some people, they'll shut down, and it'll last for weeks. I've worked with couples like this where they'll come into therapy for their weekly meeting, and for several meetings, I will notice that they are in a shutdown mode. This is usually in the beginning of therapy. Usually by session 5 and beyond, I've managed to dislodge the people, at least for the session. And usually what that does is it gives the couple a couple days of being dislodged. But people who are prone to lodging themselves into that stoic shutdown mode have a really hard time getting out of it. And I've worked with a lot of people, particularly men, but it's not always men, who will come to me after a while and they'll just be like, I don't know what's wrong with me. When I'm with you in therapy and we're talking about this, I'm like, I've been in such a mode. But as soon as I leave this office, I go back to that mode. And part of being in the mode is I don't know I'm in the mode. I'm so shut down, I don't even recognize I'm shut down. It's a result of early childhood trauma. When you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old and bad things are happening, one of the ways to cope with it is to shut down neurologically. And so you shut down, and the damage and the mistreatment or the neglect or the chaos is mitigated by the fact that you're just shut down, or you're just watching TV, or you're just playing by yourself. and you're trying to shut out the rest of the world. This is generally what we call dissociation. Of course, the disorder of dissociative disorders are much more specific and severe, but generally speaking, we dissociate. It's like, and we're all capable of this, but when you repeatedly do it, especially some kids, they're in a constant state of that. Then when you enter a romantic relationship because you're trying to get your needs met and there's any kind of conflict, you shut down. It's just like, because it's just this itchy trigger finger. It's just this toggle switch that the first sign of chaos, boom, it just turns you off. It's like have you ever dealt with a breaker, an electric breaker, and it's just you plug in a heater, click, and sometimes you just have to replace the breaker. Well, that's what therapy can do. Essentially, you're trying to replace that breaker. You're trying to make it so that you don't turn off as fast. There's nothing wrong with turning off under extreme circumstances, but just when you're in a minor conflict with your spouse and you're turning off, you don't give yourself any opportunity to actually work on what's. So I don't know what's going on with him, but something's going on there, because she just had made that choice of like, okay, I'm going to try to be positive, and she's laying out there. And he is just like, I'm just listening. It was a perfect opportunity for him to say, yeah, honey, I believe the same thing. I'm right there with you. I believe in our potential, and I love you too. So thanks for saying that. And yeah, we have some things to work on. Some kind of reciprocation there. The other possibility I'll throw out there is that some more conflict has occurred that we haven't seen, and he is extremely resentful, or he's still resentful for the conflict that we did see on camera, and he doesn't have a way of voicing that resentment to get it resolved. I don't know. Those are just some of the possibilities. Let's continue watching. See, I think she's hurt. She's like, she's thinking, I wasn't in a good place, but I tried to be positive and extend myself. It was a bid for his benefit and my benefit, and he just dropped the ball. He didn't even have eye contact with me. And so now I'm sad. It's just a guess, but let's continue watching.
Is what she just said, does that bother you?
A little bit. Yeah. Sounds like she's not even gonna miss me.
All right. So the producer is asking some good questions, and you see his demeanor. Does something about that bother you? Because the producer's like, you're not saying anything. What's going on? And he's just like, well, a little bit. So that exhibits that general, and he's done this in many contexts, a general approach to conflict of subduing himself and not recognizing that he has feelings and that he should communicate them so that people can take care of him. So he's like, a little bit. And then she's worried about him, which is great, reaches out and puts her arm on his arm, which is another wonderful thing you can do in conflict. And then he says, well, I forget what he said, something, let's rewatch that.
Is what she just said, does that bother you?
A little bit. Yeah. Sounds like she's not even gonna miss me. Sounds like she doesn't even care if I leave right now.
So that's interesting that he interpreted it that way, that as she was saying, essentially, well, we've had some issues, but he's a good guy, and I think we have a lot of potential. So that is not as positive as saying something like, oh my God, I'm totally in love with him. I'm 110% sure this is totally going to be great. Everything's awesome. I'm guessing that's what he was hoping she would say, because that would reassure him that she loves him. But anything down from there, it's like, oh no, she has second guesses about this relationship. And then that hurt his feelings, and then he covered that up somehow, and then he says something that's hostile, which is, well, geez, it sounds like you're not even going to miss me. So if you watch that exchange, and again, I don't know the context of what's happening around this, just before this conversation, but that certainly it wasn't the way I heard what she was saying. What I heard was, we're having some issues, but I have hope for the future, and I think he's a good guy, and I think this could work. But he heard, I don't love you. That's what he heard. So what do we extrapolate from that? Total speculation. He has relational traumas that were along those lines of he was being shown that people don't really love him, that people don't really care. And unless you're 110% in love with him, anything down from there is like, oh my God, they don't love me. And you see his approach. You know, she has her way of reacting to emotional hurt, and he has his way of just like nonchalant, like, well, I don't know, what are you gonna do? Sounds like you don't really love me or miss me, but you know, I guess I'm just gonna sit over here and be quietly hurt by that. And instead of saying, honey, I don't know what's going on, but there's something about what you just said that makes me feel like you don't love me. Do you love me? I guess I need some reassurance that you love me and that you want to be with me right now. That's very vulnerable. Why can't he do that if that is what is in his heart? Well, because when we're young and throughout our lives, when we are vulnerable, even just a little bit, and we get slapped down, we learn not to do that anymore. But we still have needs and we still have vulnerability. So we got to communicate it somehow. And I'll just be mildly vulnerable over here. You know, I don't mind me, but you know, you really just hurt my feelings and devastated me. But you know, everything's fine. And it's, people might call it passive aggressive. I don't know if I'd call it that. It's just a way of protecting yourself. It's like you're throwing stuff out there. It's like you're in the 9th grade and you're at a high school dance. I don't know if around the world they have high school dances. About half of you actually aren't in the United States, and so I always have to know. But United States, not always. We tend to have these dances at high school where you dance to music and people ask each other to dance, and so you walk across the dance floor and you ask someone to dance. And a way to protect yourself in the Mike style is to say, hey, I thought I might dance. I don't know, kind of like this song. Didn't know if you wanted to dance, but, you know, if you don't want to, hey, it's chill. I'm just sitting here, just sitting back. And, I love myself whether you dance with me or not. While deep down, you're just like obsessed and you have this huge crush on that person. Because it's protective. If the person says no, you're like, yeah, it's cool. Hey, cool. It's all right. I'll just be over here. And when you keep doing that, it doesn't give people the opportunity to actually take care of you, such that you can learn that people can be trusted. When you continually give off that nonchalant attitude, people actually think you don't have vulnerability. You effectively trick everyone into the fact or the idea that you don't have vulnerability. And then no one takes care of you and you never get your needs met, and you never trust anyone to take care of your feelings because no one ever does. You're over here going, how come no one listens to my feelings? Well, it's because, you just learn to be super chill about your feelings and everything's fine. And no one knows you have any feelings, and so people can't take care of your feelings.
Just to say words, okay, I love Mike, and what? It means nothing. It's just words.
We just heard all your words.
But love has to grow, and there are a lot of difficult situations you have to go.
That's not what he asked.
I think you're referring to the question I said, do you love Michael?
So I get his vulnerability. I mean, that's a rough one. The producers, do you love Michael? And what I'm guessing he would love to hear is 100% yes. A very quick answer. Yes, I love him. We have problems, but I love him. Yes. And she's hesitating, which might be how she really feels. I don't know. Maybe for her, and I understand from the show that not everyone around the world, and of course I understand this as well, but particularly on the show, that around the world, the word love or how it translates or even the notion of being in love is culturally dependent, meaning that in other cultures, to be in love can mean something different and can also mean something different in how you communicate it. In the United States, generally speaking, not everyone, but to intimate that you're not completely 100% in love with your partner is one of the most hurtful things you could say to someone, right? Or just, someone says, hey, do you love me 100%? You're like, I love you. Definitely 90% I love you. For most people that I know, professionally and personally, if a spouse said that to them, that would hurt. Not everyone, of course, but that would really hurt. It would hurt me if my wife said, yeah, I love you 90%, right now, 90%, sometimes 92, sometimes 85. So it's just an idea. It's an idea that we have from our culture. It's not a scientific fact that humans are supposed to have that value. And around the world, they might have a different value. I don't know, but maybe in Ukraine, they have a value of more, I don't know, realism around how much love you might feel towards your spouse in a given minute, or what does being in love mean exactly. I don't know if that's what's happening right now. Comment below if you have some thoughts on that from either side or from around the world in terms of ideas about that. And that's an important thing to know, right, when you're in a relationship, an important thing for a therapist to talk about when you're talking about cross-cultural relationships. But even if they're not cross-cultural, it's important if there is a conflict like this to say, well, let's talk about your values when it comes to what do you mean. But anyway, so the producer's asking the question. He's like, and then she's a little hesitant, and you see his body language. You're just like, yeah, there you go. She's just a terrible person. Instead of saying, oh, honey, when you don't answer that question right away, it devastates me. It hurts me. I'm guessing if he were to do that, she would say, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I love you. But the way he comes across, one, it's nonchalant, it's shut down. Two, it seems like he doesn't care, right? He's sort of indicating he cares. But it doesn't necessarily get into someone's soul that you're desperate for their love when you're just like, yeah, there she goes. She doesn't love me. What are you going to do? I mean, whatever. Like, it doesn't communicate, honey, when you do that, it's so hurtful. Could you say that you love me? I need that right now. I need you to tell me you love me. Convince me you love me. But you have to have had a childhood in which that level of vulnerability was not punished, and two, was attuned to, meaning that someone noticed you and actually took care of you in that moment.
I'm a woman. I'm okay not to be sure. I think I'm okay, because women are not sure usually. It's okay. And it would be a lie from my side to say I love him.
So I don't know if that makes any sense to me, that in general, all women are unsure in the beginning of a relationship, and men are always sure in the beginning. There are research on gender and being in love, and there are some minor average differences between the groups, but in my experience, being unsure or sure is just a case-by-case basis and doesn't have any relation to gender. Now, some of you might say, well, me and all the women I know, we were just like her. Okay, it's anecdote, it's not science. It's fine. But the point is that there's nothing wrong with her saying, I am not sure. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know about other people, I don't know about other women, but I'm not sure. And people will do that when they feel attacked or when they're insecure. They will rope in other groups to justify their feelings, which could obscure it, because for him, he could be like, well, wait, you're saying all women? I don't know other women that are like that. Or you're saying that since I'm a man, I'm just like blindly sure. Like, you end up involving these other debatable ideas. It's not debatable that she is not sure, and that's okay. That's where she's at. People do this all the time. They'll say, like, in a relationship, he could say something like, well, men don't like to be told that they aren't loved. Men like to be told that they're loved. And when all men aren't told that they're not loved, then they want to break up. So what that does is you're trying to justify your feelings by roping in a group. Now, it's debatable. There's case-by-case basis, but I've seen people do this. And what I do is I'll sort of slow someone down. I'll be like, okay, you're making some claims about women in general, which is fine. I don't know. But I want you to speak more from where you're coming from, because that's not debatable. So you're saying that you're not in love right now, and that you believe that that's okay, and that it might grow to love, and that you don't think it's that unusual for someone to be like that. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Then we're in a realm of non-debatability. There's no debate to the fact that that's how she feels, and that she feels okay about that, that she doesn't feel like there's something pathological about that. Anyway, let's continue watching.
It's a wrap for me.
All right, so he's doing what both of them do in the middle of a conflict, is to walk away. So I would hope that either when he returns, or that he wouldn't have to do this, is for him to be like, honey, this is really hurting my feelings. I'm just speculating, and give her a chance to take care of him. There's a version of what's happening right now where he says that. She says, honey, I really, really like you, and I want to develop into a deep love. And when I say love, I'm talking about the kind of love you feel after a few years of being in a relationship with someone. So don't take what I'm saying as some indication that I don't, in a way, love you, but really, really like you. That's for sure. Let me reassure you. Let me look into your eyes. Let me hold you. If he walks away like this and doesn't express his vulnerability, then she could take it as an offense too. Like, he's always running away from any conflict we have. Right now, he doesn't seem to love me either. He doesn't seem to care about my feelings. What am I supposed to do? Let's continue watching. And it's total speculation. I think he has a pattern, and this is common to avoidant attachment style. When you're hurt or afraid relationally, one of the options you have available, because you can't be vulnerable, right? Because you learned early in life that there was no point in that. You have to communicate your feelings somehow. And one of the ways that avoidant people will express their feelings is through distance, punishing distance. I'm trying to come up with a catchy phrase for this, like punishing silent treatment distance. And the hope is, I don't know for him, but for many people who do this, they're hoping that she will feel bad. She'll feel guilty. And like, oh, I feel he walked away, and now I feel bad, and I must have hurt his feelings. I'm going to run to him and say that I love him and that I'm sorry that I hurt his feelings. A lot of times for men in this situation, for avoidant people in this situation, that's what they're hoping for. It's not a functional way of expressing that need, because the other person isn't likely to receive it that way. But when I work with avoidant people like this, I'll say, okay, when you walked away, what were you hoping your partner would hear from that? You know, we're always communicating to each other when we're in a relationship. And as you walked away, why did you walk away? One. And two, what did you hope she would understand as you were walking away? What were you hoping that as you walked away that she would think about? A lot of times people in his position will say, well, I was hoping that she would realize that it's terrible that she doesn't love me. I was hoping she realized that how am I supposed to put all this effort into a relationship with someone that doesn't even really love me? You know, something along those lines. But let's continue watching. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Let me know what you think. Also, if you haven't already become a patron of the podcast, that's how we know you like what we're doing. There should be a link below. Go to patreon.com and become a patron of the podcast. If you do that, that would be fantastic. If you don't want to do that, that's also fine. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.